So um, I do want to point out, I want to thank you for supporting a purchase of the book because I'm donating my proceeds to send this young lady, Keo Savan, who is in Cambodia, to college. She is a civil engineering major. And when I saw her this summer, she thanked me so much for the support. And she told me that she hopes to go to graduate school at MIT, Harvard, or Stanford. And I said, well, I'm going to have to sell a lot of books. But so my greatest hope for the book is that it helps nonprofits get better results through measurement, and also that it'll change the life dramatically of this young woman. And so I'm going to cover 3 topics: maturity of social media practice, being data informed, and some how-tos around measurement. And if those of you who are also able to multitask and use Twitter, please feel free to tweet your insights, resources, stories, questions using the NetNon hashtag. So that's hashtag NetNon. And while I can't answer those in real time, I do carefully follow that stream. And I will answer your questions, and it may even give me an idea for a blog post or two. So, as I mentioned, I've been doing capacity building around technology for nonprofits for a long time. And one of the things that I've learned is that change happens incrementally, that organizations really need to take small steps to build capacity in using the technology and tools effectively. And so over the years that I've been working in social media, I've developed a maturity of practice framework and a way for organizations to actually measure their progress. And it was inspired by this Martin Luther King quote: if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. So it looks something like this. If you're at the crawling stage, and crawling is not bad, you're just where you're at. You may need to flesh out and develop a communications or marketing strategy, and you may need to look at some culture change issues in your organization, because social media requires being more agile. And so that's the starting point. When you get to walking, you're beginning to link your social media with results. You're integrating it with other channels. You're developing an appreciation and a knowledge of networks. And the way that you're working is developing pilots, small projects where you focus on a campaign, a channel, or one program, using measurement, and you're learning and improving results with that. And you're also building incremental capacity. Up at the walking stage, you're probably allocating somewhere up to 5 to 20 hours of staff time per week. And that could be one staff person, or it could be several. And so the big chasm to cross to get from walking to running, of course, is investing in staff time. And and at that point, you're able to kind of prove and show the value of social media. You have a clear ladder of engagement where you're bringing your activists or people who could really care about your project or organization from just knowing about you to being your greatest fans and spreading your messaging. You have a really good integrated content strategy. You have a process for learning about and experimenting and using best practices, including new technology platforms, and again, using measurement and learning and all of the above. At the flying stage, you've become a master at building your network or your movement. And you have many what I call free agents or champions that work for you online and off. And that you've mastered multi-channel engagement. And that means that it's not just social media, it's your email, newsletters, your website, offline. And your engagement and your content and measurement follows each of those channels, so that you are fine-tuning and getting ultimate results. And then you also have a organizational process where through measurement you are continuously improving what you're doing, learning from failures, and getting better at where you're working. So that's the basic kind of practice framework. And this year, for me, through my work at the Packard Foundation and building on the work in the book, I've been able to actually quantify this. So you can actually look at the different practice areas, determine what level you are, and come up with a score. So for example, if you scored a 2.3 in networked mindset, that means you're at the walking stage, getting close to running. And what's really good about this assessment is that when you do that, I've used this a lot with movements of organizations that are working together, and it helps them understand where the knowledge is and how they can learn from each other, because a key tenet of building a movement with networks is really spreading and sharing those best practices, which requires being transparent and requires being open. So that is the crawl, walk, run, fly, kind of at a high level. A lot of it's described in my first and second books, The Network Nonprofit and Measuring the Network Nonprofit. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of being a data-informed nonprofit as opposed to a data-driven nonprofit. So being data-informed means that you are not just collecting data, but you're actually using it to improve and get results. And so, and again, there's a crawl, walk, run, fly process. At the crawling stage, you may not have the systems in place, a dashboard, or the habit of collecting and analyzing data and making sense of it, and not necessarily taking advantage of some of the tools that are out there to collect your data. And as you can see in each one of these categories, you're strengthening and getting stronger in the area of analysis, use of the tools, and of course making sense of the data. It's always helpful to kind of show what that looks like in an organization. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of organizations that I consider to be, at the higher end of the scale. And I know a lot of times if I have smaller nonprofits in this audience, you may say, oh, well, we can't do that. We don't have the resources. And well, you can using a very incremental process, but I want to inspire you and show you what some of the possibilities are. So one of organization that I think is a brilliant example of a data-informed organization is DoSomething.org. And Do Something has a mission of having 15 million teens active on social change campaigns online by 2015. And the way they do this is they implement online campaigns that use social media, that use mobile. And a couple of years ago, the board of Do Something sat down with the executive director, Nancy Lublin, who's on the bike, and their board members included people like Reid Hoffman from LinkedIn and DJ Patel, who is the data scientist from LinkedIn. And they told her, lose your gut. And what that meant was that they were telling her you need to make decisions based on data, not just based on intuition, and you need to use that data to improve what you're doing. And they didn't just say that. They sat down and they helped establish processes and capacity to do that. So, so they're really lucky that they have two data scientists. I jokingly call them data nerds. That's Bob Philbin and Jeffrey Blant. And they're on staff there at Do Something, and they work in partnership with staff. They don't just sit in the corner and play with their spreadsheets. They explain what pivot tables are in plain English and help staff use their data to help them improve the results of their campaign. What's really nice about Do Something is that they have an open office space, and they have torn down all the silos and walls around data. They don't have the fundraising department saying, that's my data, you can't have it. They're all working together around outcomes. One of the rules that they have in their organization, I think this is so important, is that one of their mantras is, spend more time thinking about that data than collecting it. So they don't drown in data. They actually are very thoughtful about what they collect. And that's an example of one of their dashboards from a recent campaign. As you can see, the thinking process includes visualizing it. So let me give you an example of one of the ways that they're data informed. This is an app that they developed for a campaign to get more pets adopted. And what they found in their research was that pets were not getting adopted from kill shelters because there were not enough cute pictures of them online. So they created this campaign called Furtographers. And so where they recruit teens to go into kill shelters, take photos of the dogs and the cats, and get them online and on Facebook. And so what happened was, when they launched this project, and they did this on the Today Show with Kathy Lee, and they had a bunch of cute puppies that needed to be adopted. Kathy Lee happened to drop one of them on its head. Now, she didn't hurt it, but there was somebody who made a video, and it kind of went viral in a few blogs. And if you look at the text there, you'll see that link, do something, that links right over to their landing page. And so when this started to happen, Jeffrey and Bob excused themselves, and they were actually watching the conversion rate, how many people were actually downloading that app. And they were brainstorming ideas to improve the effectiveness of it. So this campaign is over, but you can see they had very clear definitions of success. Ultimately, they wanted animals adopted. They wanted donations to in supplies to the shelters. And in order to get that, they needed to have, a certain number of cute animal photos shared and shares online. And what was really interesting, the kinds of things they were testing with their metrics for conversions were whether or not the picture of the right picture of the dog. So for example, when you see that dog there, it's looking straight at you. They tested a couple of pictures where they had the dog looking straight at people versus the dog not looking at your eyes, and they found that the dog looking straight in your eyes had a better conversion rate for people downloading the app. So they're very, very data informed. Let me show you another organization. I know I have a little animal welfare and dog theme going, but this comes from the Humane Society of the U.S. And the Humane Society, Carrie Lewis is their social media person. They're an early adopter, but they are more of a traditional, large organization that is using social media. And so this is an example of their campaign when they surpassed a million fans. And so I asked Carrie, can you look at the indicators on this list, and can you reflect with me, where do you think your organization is in terms of measurement? And so they thought that, she thought she was someplace in between walking and running, and scored herself as a 2.5. And the reason for that is that that they're very data informed within their social media department, but it hasn't spread organizational wide. But to get to that, they do this thing with a 9-minute meeting every week with different departments, and they gather their data, they project it on the screen, and they develop a report on what they learned and what they're going to do for the next time around. It still hasn't scaled organizational wide. There's still, issues around not making decisions solely based on data, just based on what they think, and they're trying to change that. And that upper management still doesn't appreciate data informed approaches. They're still they want to get things done. One of the things they discovered is that for them, one of their key performance metrics is dollars raised for fundraising campaigns. Now, in order to determine that, they need to measure something called conversion on their website. In order to do that, they need to put something called source codes on their on their website landing pages where people make a donation. And so they had to get the website department or the web manager to be able to put these source codes in. And at first, back in 2011, they were saying, wow, that's way too much work. We're not going to do that. And they talked about, the importance of having this data. And so they started this thing called the source code jar. It's like the equivalent of a swear jar. And so you throw a quarter in every time you didn't use a source code. And they haven't earned enough money yet to go out for ice cream, but they do have source codes on all of their campaigns to measure how well social media converts people to being donors. And I think the last statistics were something like 33%. And this gives them a lot of really good information about how to fine-tune their campaigns. Here's another example. This is from Upwell, and they borrow from the startup method. There's lots of different methods that you can use to look at results. So Upwell is ocean conservation organization, and basically what they're trying to do, also working with a movement, is to raise the level of conversation and engagement around ocean conservation. So they start off with big listening. They listen to the chatter on social media channels. They identify opportunities. Then they package content for their advocates to take out there and start conversations. And they spread this throughout their distributed network, and they're measuring the impact. And the way they're doing that is to measure whether or not there's been an increase in the social media conversation from the baseline. And then they improve and share their best practices throughout their network. So let's see if this is, for some reason, my slides are not, let's see, there we go. Okay, so this is an example. This is a chart, and each one of those lines represents people talking on Facebook or Twitter and other, and other social media channels about that are using keywords that relate to their issues, whether it's ocean, overfishing, ocean, MPA, sustainable seafood. And they've honed this method so, like, even if they pick up people who are saying the word ocean, they can separate out those that are saying Ocean City, Maryland versus those that are talking about ocean conservation. And so if you notice the red, pink one, that big spike there in the middle, are people talking about sharks. And shark conservation is one of their issues. And so what that happened to be was chatter around the Discovery Channel's Shark Week. So they thought, an opportunity. And so when they analyzed people who were tweeting with the Discovery Channel Shark Week hashtag, they discovered that the conversation was in three different, they were either, yay, we love sharks, or it was, oh my God, Jaws, shark terror, or else it was save sharks. So they thought the people who are already talking about saving the sharks, they're the converted. They don't need to preach to the converted. The terror people, maybe they leave those alone, but they wanted to go and leverage those people that were saying yay sharks and educate them about ocean conservation. So they packaged content and materials, and they got their advocates out and tweeting using that hashtag. And they were able to measure whether or not they actually increased. The one metric that matters was, did we increase the conversation about shark conservation? As you can see, yes, they did. So at this point, you are, if I had webinar software, I'd ask you where you were. A lot of organizations are at the walking stage, I find lately, and that's not bad because you can improve up to flying. So let's take a look at how we do that. The keys for that happen to be about having some measurement discipline. And don't let that scare you. It doesn't have to be an excessive amount of time. It doesn't have to be difficult to do. And what you do is you start with small pilots that are easy win, low-hanging fruit. And maybe you're only collecting 2 data points. You don't have to collect 100 data points. And maybe you're using really simple, very simple software to do this. And you're going through this whole process of learning and improving. So let me take you through that very quickly. In my book, we use Katie Payne's 7 simple steps of measurement. And these will probably sound very familiar to you. You have a goal, you understand your audience, you look at how much time it's taking you, you get a benchmark, you get a KPI, and everyone always asks, what's a KPI? A KPI is a key performance indicator. It's just a data point that tells you whether or not you're being successful. You pick your data tool, you collect your data, and you get some insights from it, and you rinse and repeat. There's other frameworks like Leap of Reason, which is more outcome-based evaluation, and there's also Lean Analytics, which comes from the startup community. So for any of you who feel like you are at the crawling stage of measurement, and again, there's nothing bad with being at the crawling stage. Let me show you this one example of a very small organization that can do this. This is the Kearney Street Workshop. It's a Asian American art organization, and they use the 7 steps of measurement. They know their audience, which are artists and people in their neighborhood or community. They also know how their audience perceives them and what they think about them. They always want to show the human face of artists. They wanted to remove the mystique, and they wanted the audience to engage with them. So given that this was a really small organization with 2 staff people and barely 6 hours a week of 6 hours that they could devote to their social media, they just focused in on Facebook, and they set 2 goals. They wanted to increase engagement by the number of comments per post. They wanted to make sure that those conversations were meaningful, that they made the organization appear to be more accessible. And the other thing, which was really important, is that they wanted to increase enrollment in classes and attendance at events. And the way that they were measuring this, they set a benchmark that we're going to get 10% new students or attenders say that they heard about us through a survey on Facebook. Very doable, very simple. So this is an example about how you can apply the 7 steps of measurement, if you're at the crawling stage. I hope I'm still being heard. And I was going to pause for a moment to see if there were any questions that came in through the comments. I don't even know if Sarah Jane can hear me or not. Pause for 1 second. You might be muted. I'm hoping I'm not.
Hey, Beth.
Okay,
I don't, no questions coming through. I think since everyone's on a slight delay, they probably don't know it's a question session right yet. But I think between the comments and maybe the Twitter comments that we can maybe address those after.
Okay, great. So, since we started late, Sarah Jane, I'm going to probably end a little bit earlier in the presentation than I had planned so we don't go over. Do you want to end promptly at noon?
If you're comfortable, Beth, we can roll a little longer since we had some technical issues.
Okay, great. I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so the first step of measurement is that, defining your results or your goal. And a lot of us that work in nonprofits, that's fairly easy given what our mission is. But it's often hard for us to connect the right data point. And if we're a large organization, finding, that data point translated to different departments, because different departments think, care about different things. So and also I think it's easy for us to get distracted with metrics on social media and not actually pick the one that matters most. And that's sort of explained in this cartoon here for a cat shelter. And the caption is, our cat adoption numbers tanked this quarter, but the important thing is our YouTube views are way up. So what's more important here is getting cats adopted. And so yes, having a cute cat video about cat adoption, having views on that YouTube video is important, but it's also important to measure the connection between people who viewed that video and actually went into the shelter and adopted, much like the Do Something app. So, and there's no magic to this, and what that takes, is, having everybody get on the same page, have a whiteboard session talking about asking, what is success? What would it be if we were to say, wow, we were really kicked it on that? What does that look like? And it might take a few meetings, but a lot of us skip that step because it's kind of hard. It's much more fun to talk about the tools, but don't skip that step. Okay, so the next thing, the biggest, most frequent common question I get is, what is a KPI? Okay, a KPI is a data point that is connected to a result or a goal, and you'll see, or an outcome, which is on the left side of that table, that tells you whether or not you're successful or not successful. And so another way to explain it, and I love this, it comes from Katie Payne, is she calls it KBBI, which is a kicking butt indicator. So that means, like, what would you have to see in your data reports to say, wow, we really kicked butt? So, and it's pretty straightforward. This is a pretty generic list, and organizations have taken this and used this to kind of customize what they actually need. So let's say one of your results is from using social media is to increase donations or to increase your donor base. So a % increase in new donors would be your kicking butt index or your KPI. A lot of us are trying to measure engagement, and so it would be a % increase in engagement, whether that's comments, shares, and on the particular channel. So very important to identify your outcome and also zero in on what that key performance metric is. Next comes hooking up your measurement dashboard. And this can be the part that where it gets, complex and it can bog down. And this is the part where frankly, where I was like, oh my God, this is going to take too much work. But if we just think about it as a big TV, that we want to get the cable connection set up first, right? And that's your key performance indicator, okay? If it's your whole overall result is to get pets, pets adopted, it's the increase in the number of pets adopted. If your goal is to raise money, it's dollars raised, etc. So you start with that big goal and you've hooked up the cable. Okay, and so now you're ready to maybe go get Apple TV or get Netflix or your radio or whatever. So let's take a look at that. This is Moms Rising. They are a flyer. One of their key outcomes is to grow their movement. Moms Rising is building a strong multicultural movement of people who care about family, economic security, and well-being. And so they had, they sat down and they thought very carefully, what do we need to know that we're growing the movement? And, are we adding new members? It's, the increase of new members per month. Are we losing members? So this would be a decrease of members lapsing per month. Are we diversifying the membership, the number of collaborations with multicultural organizations? Okay, so that's hooking the cable up to the big TV. Here's the Netflix and the Apple TV, which is their social media, web, and email metrics, because they're using all of these tools. So what do they need to know that the movement is growing? It's the conversion rate of people signing up for memberships. It's the number of unique visitors to their blog. It's the number of retweets and that they're getting, the number of listings that they're getting for the times that they're tweeting about their membership opportunities, or it's how the reach of their content over on Facebook. And so each one of these, I know it looks kind of busy and scary, is just a separate little worksheet in their Excel spreadsheet that they collect. And it doesn't take them hours and hours and hours to collect the time because they're very focused on the metrics they need. So what happens a lot, I think, when we're trying to hook up the big TV is that we're like kids in the candy store. Oh, there's this data point, there's that data point. Or else we want to make it really hard for ourselves. So I think for every data point that you want to put on your dashboard, challenge yourself. Go, how easy is this to collect? How hard is this to collect? And if it's going to take you many more hours to collect it, then find someone to come in and help you figure out whether you can automate it or don't collect it. And then also give it the so what test. How useful is this data point? Does anyone really care about this? And if the answer is no, don't collect it. Don't get caught in the trap of just in case data, And if you decided not to collect something and you find a couple months down the road that oh wow, this is in fact valuable, add that and start collecting it. But the idea here is to start small, incrementally with a small number of data points and build on that. Okay, so this is the part that everyone loves. This is the ice cream. This is the candy. I like it too. The tools that you need to collect the data. I mean, I could spend all day on tools, but you know what? Don't. Because, don't feel like you have to have fancy, expensive tools to do it, because ultimately what you're going to need is a good spreadsheet. But there are 3 different kinds of tools, and with nonprofits, we're mostly caught up with the analytics tools, like Google Analytics or Crowd Booster for Twitter or Bitly or Facebook Insights, because a lot of what we're measuring online is reach or engagement or action or conversion. But other goals may require us to use a different category of tools. So if we want to look at and evaluate how well our messaging and our content is out there, we may want to do content analysis, much like Shark Week. Or if we're looking at behavior or preferences or attitudes, we'll need to do survey research. So don't forget about, that it's not just analytics that you'll need, that there are these other categories of tools. And of course, I think the most important tool is the spreadsheet. And all of those tools back here, I'm going to go back here, whether they are, you pay for them or they're expensive or they're free, ultimately you are exporting those into a Google spreadsheet. If you're really geeky, you're putting it into a database. So I think it really behooves you to learn a couple of data nerd Excel tricks. And I do have a guest post by Ann Emery, who wrote the top 10 Excel secrets of nonprofit data nerds. And you know what? I used to be, I'll tell you, here's a true confession. I was allergic to Excel. I didn't know how to do pivot tables or even do the simple graphs. And I hated Excel. It just drove me crazy. And then I started learning it. I read a few books on it. I found Anne's terrific tutorials, and wow, it is the best tool ever. And once you start to learn the time-saving techniques in Excel, it makes data analysis and so much quicker and easier. You'll love it. Okay, so I started this blog called Yeah, That's a Spreadsheet, and I'll share the link to it. It has kind of a naughty name, but I've been looking at nonprofit spreadsheets for measurement and also social media strategy, and I created a Tumblr blog, and I have a Dropbox with a lot of examples, and I'll make those links available. I think JD Laska is also working on a webinar coming up, and I shared all of them with JD. He's also collecting. So we'll have this sort of shared archive where nonprofits can look at social media spreadsheets. But this particular spreadsheet comes from Global Giving, and what you'll notice about it, aside from the fact that it's the colors match their logos, that it has information around their objectives, their strategies, their tactics, not just their metrics. And they're combined in this really cool dashboard here, and it takes their community manager, Allie Carlson, maybe a couple hours every quarter to pull this together, but it cues her up for really good, thoughtful analysis of the data to improve results. So I say, now that's a spreadsheet. Okay, so if you're going, oh my God, we don't have anyone in our, in our organization who knows how to use Excel. Sometimes I'm skeptical as to whether that's true. We don't have any of these resources. We can't do it. Rest assured that there are places to find data nerds who can work with you on a volunteer basis, or analytics nerds, or so here's a few of them: DataKine, the Analysis Exchange, the Sumal Foundation. And you know what? Another great way is if you don't, be someone's homework. This University of Washington just started this class, Introduction to Data Scientists, and they're asking for nonprofits that they can pair the students with. Wouldn't you want to be someone's homework? I have a link to this blog post that I'll also leave with you on where you can find other data nerds if you want them, who are volunteering their time to work with social good causes. So I also want to talk about, that once you've collected your data, you have this killer spreadsheet, you figured out exactly what you need for success, the couple of data points, you need to use your data for decision making. And data is like fresh bread. When it comes out of the oven, it's fresh, it smells great, you just want to devour it, right? But, and that's when you should be using your data. Don't wait until the end of the year to collect all your data for Facebook, because it's going to be like bread after a year. It's going to be stale. So again, I want to emphasize starting small. Here's an example of a spreadsheet that I put together that you'll have access to in the Dropbox. It's a Facebook editorial calendar and metrics sheet. So the blue are just a couple of data points that will help you with setting up your editorial calendar. The pink is reach and virility, two metrics that you can collect from Facebook Insights. And it just takes a few minutes to transfer them over to the spreadsheet. And then there's the purple column. At the end of the month, you look at it and say, what are the patterns here? Are images performing better than videos? Is funny content doing better than serious content? And then you jot down a few lessons learned in the purple, and that helps you when you're planning your content for the following month. So this is a spreadsheet from a very small NGO in Pakistan. As you can see, they followed the instructions, and then they said, okay, I collected this data. Now what do I do with it? So I had them go through and I had them color code all the content that you posted on Facebook that did really well, got a high virility or high reach. Color it green, and then color the stuff that didn't do so well. Color that in yellow, and then go and actually look at what you did and write down, like, why did it do so well? Why did the ones who were yellow, that you coded yellow, why didn't they do so well? And I guarantee you will have, you will invest 20 minutes of time, and it will get you better results because you'll learn something. Some organizations have structured ways for reflection and improvement, and I really appreciate Moms Rising because they use this technique called, called joyful funerals. A joyful funeral is that they've given themselves permission not to continue doing something that's not working, and to take the stigma out of it, they sort of make a joke and say, is it time to bury that technique? Should we have a joyful funeral? They also do something called Metrics Mondays, where they spend 30 minutes of their time on Monday morning where the team is looking at their metrics. Do Something also has an internal fail fest every quarter where they get the staff to dress up in pink boas, take some data from a campaign and talk about why it didn't work, and what insights can we gain for the next time around. Very important to have some sort of process like this internally. So the last piece of content that I'm going to address is the time you are spending on social media worth it? You know, that ROI question. So, we know that social media isn't free. It is a matter of your time. So you want to be tracking your time. And then you want to compare the amount of time that you've spent getting a particular result and saying, well, was it worth it? We thought that this Twitter chat was only going to take us 2 hours to do, but it ended up taking 8 hours and we didn't get really great results. So, how can we adjust this so we can get better results? Or is this something that we shouldn't be spending our time on? Is there another technique that we can use that will get us a better result that will take less time? So another way to think about it is to line up your key outcomes, and that is on the left. You saw this chart already. It's in my book. And your key performance metric, and then to kind of brainstorm what's the value and the cost of using social media to do this, and you can actually get to assigning a financial cost. Here's another example. This is kind of geeky. It's from Grist, and Grist is an environmental news site, and so their most important metric that matters is referral traffic from social platforms. What is the percentage of people that are coming over from Twitter or Facebook onto their website? That's one of their key metrics. So they decided to do an experiment. Stage 1 ran in January to February, and they integrated social media tasks into all staff roles. And look, they saw a slight increase. And they said, wow, what if we hired a quarter-time social media staff person and tracked our key performance metric, which is referral traffic? And look, they got quite a rise, as you can see in that second chart. So that's just another way to think about it. Not only tracking your time, doing the math, but you can also track your key performance metric against how much time that you invest. So in summary, for improving your measurement practice, identify success and failure first. Spend more time identifying what you want to measure, not how to measure it. Measure in context. Don't ever collect data that you can't connect to your goals. Don't wait until the end to collect data or analyze it. Less is more. Less is more. Use measurement pilots to create a habit of collecting and apply the data to learn. And always do the is it worth it math. So what I'm going to do, I hope I'm not muted. Sarah Jane, I think maybe we can take some questions now.
Sure, yeah, we hear you great. So I know there were a couple questions on the YouTube comments about wanting to know a little bit more about the 7 steps of measurement for small groups.
Okay, was there something specific?
Now, I think the comments were just wanting to know a little bit more.
Okay, so there's like a 30-page chapter of it in the book, but in a nutshell, the 7 steps are: define your goals. So ask, figure out what does success look like. Understand your audience, and that's around, what motivates them, what causes them to act, who are they, what platforms do they get their information on. Knowing your audience, very, very important step. The next step is identifying your key your key performance indicator. And remember the chart that we went over. So let's say your key outcome is fundraising, then you want to look at percent increase in donors. Okay, so when we say a percent increase in donors, you have to actually put a number: 20%, 10%, 3%, and that's where you need a benchmark. And a benchmark, measurement is a comparative art. You don't, just pick a number out of the air. And usually you are comparing your numbers to yourself. So you might have your past performance, or you're looking at your performance compared to other similar organizations. So that's the benchmark. So step 1 was goal. Step 2 was knowing the audience. Step 3 was identifying your key performance indicator. Step 4 was doing a benchmark around it. Step 5 was tracking how much it was costing you. That was the last part of the presentation. So you want to have some system to track your time. Then the next step is to pick your tool. What data points are you collecting, and what tool will you use to collect it? And as I made a few points around that, I said really you want you want to really have a really good spreadsheet. And then the last point is actually making the time to reflect and learn about your data. So those are the 7 steps of measurement, and I gave you some tips about each one of the steps. Other questions? I'm not hearing you.
Yeah, so it was, one of the questions was, does your book talk about the creation of a logic model?
Yes. In chapter 5, it talks about logic models and theory of change. So it's in a chapter that's called Don't Confuse Activities with Results. And so there's some advice around there, and there's several different methods that you can use. One might be, return on investment. Was it worth it? Looking at the cost benefit of using your time to get X result using social media. So there are some formulas and some steps on how to do an ROI analysis for your social media. There's also how to think about social media in the context of a theory of change. And there's some questions and methodologies that you can use, and these are greatly simplified. We did a lot of the literature research in the outcome-based evaluation methods, and we put together some simplified ways of approaching this, mostly for beginners. And finally, within that, there is looking at outcomes and outputs in a logic model format. And there are some actually screen captures and examples of some organizations that are using logic models to evaluate and determine the impact of their social media, mostly on the foundation side, philanthropy side, policy organizations that work with policy change side. If that makes sense. Other questions?
Yeah, I think that's most of the questions right now. And I'm sure everyone's just a little bit behind, so there might be some ones later, but they can obviously access your site and follow you on Twitter and your Facebook.
That's right. And I also, let me actually pull up one thing. I don't know if this, you're seeing now. I did, I'll go and I'll tweet my presentation is right here. And there's a list of links to resources that I mentioned in the presentation are right there. If if they're interested in finding the spreadsheet examples or the, how to find data nerds or the different case studies I mentioned, those all can be found here. I don't know if I'm going to get away with this, but I have a Tumblr blog. It has a naughty name. I won't say it, but it's spreadsheet, nonprofit spreadsheets. The title of it's Now There's a Spreadsheet. I'm just sort of taking it through, and so every day I'm collecting and cataloging nonprofit spreadsheets here. So and these are spreadsheets that can be used for measurement or managing your social media as well. And so each one of these entries gives you a screen capture, but then you can actually download the actual spreadsheet. So, and if people have a spreadsheet they'd like to share, feel free to tweet at me and we'll follow up.
Great. There were just two, these will be the two last questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
So one was wondering if in your book, do you explain how to put some of the tools for analyzing data into use?
Absolutely. There's a whole entire chapter on that. It's actually the longest chapter in the book. It's I think it's chapter 11. I don't have the book with me offhand. I can't remember. But we talk about the three, if you remember the slide back here. Here's a trip through my desktop. Right here. It talks about the different categories of tools and the practices that you need, the best practices that you need to be able to use the tools. So, for example, we give lots of examples of how do you incorporate survey research. There's some methods for, writing good questions, how to analyze them. We have, a segment on lots of examples of how nonprofits have used the various analytics tools as well as the content analysis tools. And I do believe there's also links in there to tutorials and to larger lists of free analytics tools. And what I will do is I have a collection of let's see if I can find it. I will add it. It's called Beth's Big List, Messy List of Tools. And I'll add that to the wiki page. So if you want, this is organized by different analytics tools, and it includes both free and paid tools. So it's the monitoring tools, Twitter social network analysis tools, Twitter metrics tools, Facebook metrics tools, social media dashboard tools. You get the idea here, huh? Even like some visualization tools. So, and I keep the list like this because these tools tend to go out of date. So what I'm going to do, and you can actually watch me do this, I'm just going to add tool list to this resource in case that person's interested. And was there a second question?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty related. If your book goes into understanding or how you can understand your audience in a cost-effective way.
Well, that is such a great question. Yes, it does. And it does talk about how to research your audience and the kinds of questions that you need to ask. Anything from who are they, where do they get their information, what keeps them up at night, and what motivates them to action. And these are like really good questions that you need to know if you're going to have an effective communication strategy, which includes social media. And I would actually highly recommend, let's see, I'll actually put it up here. Now I'm going to have to, I think it's called the Smart Chart. I don't know if you're familiar with that resource. And it is actually a really good, I'm going to just add it right to our little wiki that we're developing. It will give you in-depth questions to analyze your audience. We reference a little bit in the book, but it's an interactive chart that you can actually set up an account, or you can download it and print it out on paper. And this is like the little booklet here. It's a really good resource. And there's a whole section here with in-depth questions about understanding your audience in a communications framework, okay? And I think, that's really important to have that in place, because then that extends out to your social media work as well. A difference is going to be, you're going to have to do some translation. Like this particular framework is really geared towards messaging and communications pieces, and your social media, when you go to translate that, it'll be more interactive, it'll be more conversational, and so instead of like the messaging, it may be more like, what kinds of questions can we pose to engage our audience? So hopefully that's clear. I would also, while I'm thinking about it, I just thought of another resource, and I'm going to pull it up. I just blogged this last week. Here we are. From, if you want to generically understand audiences and how, especially in the U.S., and how they're using social media, their habits, their and also like how being networked has really changed the dynamics of individuals, how it's changed the way we work, and how it's changing society, civil society. I recently did a training for a Knight Foundation initiative, and Lee Rainey, who is the director of Pew Center for Internet and American Life, did a whole thing on digital trends. And I will also now put the link into this resource, audience and digital resource. So it's also really good to look at the research that's out there and understand, how does this apply to my audience? Because some of it will, some of it won't. And I'll just put this here. Great. I know these are a lot of resources. This is, and I just probably dropped a lot of science on people. So this is here. Come back to it. I'm available on Twitter. Let me show you my handle. I'm at. I monitor this quite a bit, and I monitor the tag as well. NetNon. Thank you, Roger. I'm looking at this, I'm capturing this, I'm also doing social network analysis of this. I look at this gives me great ideas about what I should do for blog posts. So I'm at Kanter or the NetNon tag.
Beth, do you mind sharing the link or calling out the link for your wiki page?
Oh, do I have to say it out loud? Oh, the wiki, not the Tumblr.
Yes.
Okay, I have a wiki called Beth Kanter. I have 65 wikis, which is embarrassing. But I have bethkanter.wikispaces.com, and that's where you can find my whenever I do a presentation. If you go down to presentations, I do a page, and I believe there's one right here. Yes, I did. That's where they'll find this wiki page. So if you just go to bethkanter.wikispaces.com, go to presentations and find the May 2nd. If you want to look at my other resources, you'll find them linked from this page as well. Some of the other wikis I'm doing. There's a lot here, so I usually don't share all that and some of it's messy. But it just depends your level of tolerance or desire to go deeper in information, because I'm a curator, so I collect and organize stuff. So and that's why I do it for myself. And I usually share on my blog posts, I share curated higher level pointers to things, and then I have deep collections. So you saw the Tumblr blog, which is collecting spreadsheets. I also have another area that I like that you might focus on if they want. I do have Pinterest where I curate infographics, social media research data. I think the Pew Internet and American Life is the absolute best source, but if you want to look at others, I collect social media studies about how audiences are using social media, and that's over at Pinterest. And the other Pinterest board that may interest folks is called Nonprofits Show Me Your Dashboard. And so these are screen captures and examples of nonprofits' social media metrics dashboards. And some of these, I did this actually, I was collecting these as I was researching the book, so a lot of these are also in the book, and then other ones that I found after the book.
Great. Well, I think, here, I'm going to mute you real quick, Beth, so we don't get an echo. But just a reminder then that bethkanter.wikispaces.com, and you go down to the presentations link, and then you can find the information and some of these resources that Beth shared today. Definitely want to thank Beth, and I'll unmute her in a second so we don't get the echo. Thank you for everyone bearing with us too through some of these technology challenges. If you aren't familiar with HandsOn Tech in your local community, we hope you'll become familiar. Maybe we'll get Beth to go ahead and add our link onto that resource page, since you're surely going to bookmark it for all the great resources. And you can learn more about our organization, Points of Light, and also learn more about HandsOn Tech and the program, which was founded as a partnership with the Corporation for National Community Service and Google. So we're greatly appreciative, sorry, tongue twister there, for all our sponsors. And certainly we hope you'll look into any training opportunities in your community, and definitely look into all the great resources that Beth provided you, and start following her on Twitter at Kanter. And I will unmute Beth so she can say any parting words. And you might actually be muted, Beth.
Okay, I'm not now. Okay, so I really appreciated the level of the awesome level of questions that were asked. I think that they were great. They were fantastic. I know we had some barriers with the technology which prevented us from having more interaction, but I also want to tell people, if you're at all different levels, you know, if you're at the beginning level, I just, you know, again, I throw a lot of information out there, but don't be scared. Try to think about one thing that you can do to improve your measurement practice, you know, tomorrow. You know, from the many things we talked about, you know, even, and it can be really, really, really tiny. Maybe it's like sit down and have a meeting with other people in my organization about what our social media results are. Or maybe it's improve our spreadsheets, or maybe it's actually collect some data from Facebook that'll tell us how we're doing. But just take one small step, and it will not be wasted time. Measurement is never wasted time, because it will help you improve what you're doing. It'll help your organization get better social change results. So hop to it.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you again, Beth. It was wonderful. Thanks for fighting through the technology with us.
Not a problem.
And thank you, everyone.